DreamWorks has a lot of great films, but more importantly they have great franchises, from Shrek to Kung Fu Panda to How to Train Your Dragon. But of course in the pantheon of DreamWorks franchises, there is a franchise that is so polarizing by its mere existence, and that of course is the Madagascar franchise, a franchise which spawned by the accidental mega success of the first film which led to sequels in a spin-off film. But in the years since, the franchise has fallen off hard and disappeared. But why did one of DreamWorks' biggest franchises just drift into obscurity after years of success? Well, let's talk about the slow death of the Madagascar franchise. So the idea for the Madagascar franchise is wild. DreamWorks started the project based on a single world rockumentary which would be about a penguin rock band inspired by the Beatles. DreamWorks then decided it would be too goofy and repurposed the penguins from a rock band to a commando unit. And from there the four main characters would enter the mix as the story changed, which eventually became Madagascar. In summer 2005 Madagascar debuted in theaters and nobody ever expected that the film would be the massive hit that it was, making over $500 million. The critics didn't care for the film but the audience ate it up. The success was so big that DreamWorks couldn't say no to making more. In November 2008, Madagascar Escape to Africa, originally titled The Great Escape, was released, and it was an even bigger hit, making over $600 million. The critic and audience scores were strong too, which was very good news for DreamWorks. Around this time, the first spin-off based on a DreamWorks movie was produced by Nickelodeon and starred the franchise's most popular characters, the Penguins of Madagascar. It was a pretty big hit on the network and lasted 3 seasons and is still very highly rated among fans. In summer 2012, Madagascar 3 Europe's Most Wanted was released, and it was the biggest hit of the franchise, making over $700 million, and once again critics and audiences enjoyed it immensely. At this point Madagascar was on top of the world and DreamWorks had no reason to stop, until 2014. In November of that year, the Penguins of Madagascar movie was released. While one would think that a movie centered around the franchise's most popular actors would be an even bigger hit than the main series, after all it worked incredibly well for Puss in Boots, it was anything but. It only managed to make over $300 million and took a significant drop in ratings. This, along with Mr. Peabody and Sherman, were catastrophic flops and almost bankrupted DreamWorks for the third time. They still initially planned to move forward with Madagascar 4, but then they went into a merger that was years in the process and had to organize their studio and lay off a bunch of people to stay in business. After the release of the last couple films distributed by the now acquired 20th Century Fox, they announced they were shutting down the PTI studio and a couple years later were bought by Universal and Comcast. This meant new management and new plans. Longtime head and founder of DreamWorks Jeffrey Katzenberg left and was replaced by Chris Meldandry, founder of Illumination, and they had big plans for the studio. The first thing was to get How to Train Your Dragon 3 out as their first release with a new logo, and already had big plans to expand their recent successes like Trolls and Boss Baby, and the main priority to bring back big legacy IPs like Shrek and make multiple sequels and spin-offs including the beloved Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, originally titled Puss in Boots 9 Lives, and 40 Thieves, and of course the Donkey spin-off. Now you would think that another Madagascar movie would be enticing to Universal, considering the franchise made a lot of money with each installment excluding the Penguins spin-off movie, but they didn't show any interest in that. Surprisingly, they did put out a prequel spin-off show called Madagascar A Little Wild, and there were a couple of spin-off shows centered around King Julian, but they never showed any interest in making another movie, and so the franchise just kinda disappeared, with nobody considering a continuation of any kind. There were vague rumors about a potential 4th film from fans on the internet, but no official confirmation that something was in the works at DreamWorks, and so concludes the strong and very odd run of the Madagascar franchise. So why did the Madagascar franchise end and drift into obscurity? Well, I think there's a couple reasons. First, fear of failure. The Penguins of Madagascar movie not only flopped, but bombed hard. It lost millions of dollars and was so much of a disaster that DreamWorks nearly went bankrupt and could have potentially shut down. And with a failure like that which nearly killed your studio, it's hard to justify another installment to that franchise, especially to a company that is mostly concerned about profit and money like Universal and Comcast. While the main series of films were still successful and pulled in the most amount of money out of any DreamWorks property besides Shrek, even more so than Kung Fu Panda and How to Train Your Dragon. The movie that failed was the movie starring the franchise's most beloved characters, and if audiences weren't interested in seeing it in theaters, then there's no telling if the next Madagascar movie would have performed any better. And that leads into the second reason, the audience interest in this franchise. One person at DreamWorks said this: "We will only make another Madagascar movie if the world wants it, but they've got to be there for it. Otherwise it's a waste of investment." And if you go to any DreamWorks movie ranking, you won't find any of the Madagascar movies near the top. The most people will say about the movies is that they're fun and enjoyable, nothing that special, and with that kind of rep the franchise is compared to a franchise like Kung Fu Panda or How to Train Your Dragon, where they are beloved and anticipated series. There is no guarantee that the audience will come out to support another Madagascar movie, and I think DreamWorks, and by extension Universal and Comcast, know that. They knew that it would be an uphill battle to get people to go see another Madagascar movie. Even sequels to their admired franchises like Kung Fu Panda struggled to make a lot of money, and that was despite the fact that it had big names like Awkwafina and Viola Davis joining the cast. Shrek 5 will most likely make a lot of money, especially since a lot of people who grew up with the memes will most likely be a large portion of ticket purchases. But Madagascar doesn't have that same widespread appeal. Its success was a case of it coming out at the right time when people wanted to see a quirky, inventive comedy. It led to sequels and spin-offs and a lot of merchandise. But after a while the franchise got stale. It stretched its lifespan out past expectation. That's not to say that it had nowhere to go, because I do think there were still many places to go and a lot more stories to tell, especially with the addition of the new characters. But after a while people grew out of the franchise and abandoned it completely. Which is why I think the Penguins of Madagascar underperformed the way it did. Maybe if it came out in 2006 it would have been a hit. But in 2014 nobody cared about these characters that much. In everybody's minds, Madagascar was old news and nobody was interested. Their popularity had decreased over time and people had moved on. There was clearly no more life in the Madagascar IP, and so DreamWorks decided to put the franchise to rest, and it has been dormant ever since. Overall, guys, the Madagascar franchise wasn't great. Honestly, I was surprised they turned Madagascar into a franchise. I didn't like the first movie all that much and didn't really have a desire to jump back into this world and hang out with these characters again. But I have to give them credit for improving with each installment instead of getting worse and worse like a certain other franchise. It at least tried to have emotional impact, satisfying character growth, creative animation and solid comedy. But I do think eventually the franchise is gonna come back. After all, it was DreamWorks' second most profitable franchise along with Shrek for a while, which is odd when Kung Fu Panda and How to Train Your Dragon are right there. It does have an impressive track record when it comes to the box office, and I do think at some point, when Universal is out of ideas for the Shrek and Kung Fu Panda franchise, they are going to request a Madagascar 4. Knowing Universal, I can't imagine they won't jump at the opportunity to make Madagascar money. Even if the Penguins movie failed, the main franchise's revenue is still incredibly lucrative considering the third film came close to $800 million. So I do think we will see these characters again at some point. But for right now the franchise is dead. Anyways guys, what do you think? Let me know down in the comments, and I'll see you guys later.